The Royal Guard is renowned for its impeccable posture and unwavering discipline. Many tourists admire their work, but some, out of curiosity or provocation, decide to test their limits. What few people know is that these soldiers are highly trained and do not tolerate disrespect. Today, we'll see cases of people who annoyed the Royal Guard and ended up paying a high price for it. Make sure to like this video and subscribe here to the Binge Banzo channel. Let's go! Shouting at stubborn tourists is not always enough to put them in line. In the garden of Buckingham Palace, a group of visitors crossed the line of decency by getting too close to the fences. The guard, standing in his impeccable position, ordered them to step back, but his words were ignored.
Get down. Слушайте, правда, get down, точно.
After a second warning that also had no effect, he demonstrated that his patience had its limits. On the third attempt, instead of shouting again, the guard raised his weapon, making it clear he was no longer willing to tolerate the tourists' reckless behavior. Trying to impress his girlfriend, a young man decided to provoke the Royal Guard with jokes and comments, hoping to make him laugh. However, the guard maintained his firm and unshakable posture, ignoring the attempts at humor. When the young man dared to get too close, he was surprised by an authoritative shout that made him immediately retreat. It's worth noting that Royal Guards take their work very seriously, and making them laugh is not only an almost impossible task, but could also get them into trouble, as they are prohibited from showing any kind of emotion while on duty.
Oh, handsome! Step back! Oh, shit!
You can have all the discipline in the world, train and prepare yourself, but sometimes slips happen. Taking pictures alongside the Royal Guards can be a unique experience, but it requires attention and respect, not only for the guards, but also for the horses. Despite being well trained, these animals can get irritated by excessive proximity and the constant movement of tourists. One episode that illustrates this well was when a visibly annoyed horse tried to attack two tourists within seconds, showing that even the most disciplined can lose patience when exposed to stressful situations. Some tourists not only take the opportunity to snap photos, but also to flirt a little. This woman certainly can't claim she wasn't warned. While trying to pose for a picture near a horse, the animal repeatedly demonstrated, through its body language, that it was uncomfortable with the situation. Ignoring the signs, the woman remained close until the horse reacted by biting her coat and knocking her to the ground, which caused her hat to fall off. Fortunately, she was unharmed, although visibly embarrassed. Once again, a group of tourists decided to turn the serious work of a Royal Guard into a source of entertainment. Apparently, with nothing better to occupy their time, these young people began mocking and provoking the Guard, believing their jokes were the height of amusement. However, the fun quickly lost its charm and became nothing more than a nuisance. That's when a police officer, attentive to the situation, stepped in. With just a few minutes of conversation, he ensured that the funny group was removed from the area. The scene served as a reminder that respect is not optional, even in moments of leisure. This woman, completely absorbed in her music through her headphones, was so immersed in her own world that she didn't even notice the guards approaching. She only realized the situation when she had to hastily move out of the way to avoid being run over. This woman got too close to the royal guard and even tried to lean on one of them while posing for a photo. Luckily, the guard kept his composure and, instead of shouting, simply moved her away discreetly.
What can do? We're standing where he's standing. Oh, see that?
This tourist made the mistake that is constantly warned against, even on signs posted around the area. She touched the horse's reins not once, but twice, disregarding the rules. Watching the video, one might think she probably didn't understand what the guard was saying, possibly because she didn't speak English, which only made the situation worse. There's no doubt that demonstrating in front of the royal guards is not the best idea, and that's exactly what a group of protesters did. Dressed in eccentric blue outfits that even covered their faces, they held a sign protesting against the excessive use of social media, urging people to stop scrolling through feeds. However, their unusual attire ended up scaring the horse, which became restless upon seeing the group approach. The guard then had no choice but to shout, ordering them to step back quickly before the situation escalated. This tourist made the mistake of getting too close to one of the royal gates and was quickly warned by the guard, who, with little patience, was very direct in his approach. The situation left the woman visibly embarrassed, and she quickly stepped away. In many countries, the tombs of unknown soldiers are considered sacred sites, honoring those who sacrificed their lives in combat, but whose bodies were never identified. However, a tourist, unaware of the importance of the site, decided to cross the protective barriers, disrespecting the solemnity of the space. Her action did not go unnoticed. A guard, attentive and firm, quickly reprimanded her, reminding her that the memory of unknown heroes deserves absolute respect. This soldier had to quickly reprimand people who were talking near the tombs of unknown soldiers. Speaking in that area is considered disrespectful, and everyone is expected to remain silent as a sign of reverence.
And respect!
Tourists approaching the gates is far more common than you might imagine. In this video, the cameraman was lucky enough to capture a guard warning two visitors within just a few minutes. It's not an easy task, but with great patience, the guard maintained order, reminding everyone of the limits that should not be crossed.
Stay clear of the archers!
This little boy was quite clever. Upon noticing the guard approaching, he quickly got the message and, without hesitation, moved away from the fence, avoiding a more tense situation. Thanks to his quick reaction, the guard didn't need to raise his voice or shout, keeping everything in order calmly.
Guards.
This teacher was reprimanded by the royal guards because his group, during their visit to the tombs of unknown soldiers, laughed during the changing of the guard, a behavior considered disrespectful. Some tourists truly demonstrate an impressive lack of respect, even after the royal guard politely asked them to be quiet and maintain composure. One particularly disrespectful tourist continued talking incessantly, completely ignoring the environment and the authority present. This horse was clearly not having a good day and made it very clear that it didn't want anyone nearby. When some tourists approached, it moved away with a sudden head motion and took a few steps back.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you for the work.
The situation seemed to be under control, but suddenly, the horse became even more agitated and, in an impulse, lunged toward the tourists, causing everyone to run away. Fortunately, the guard managed to regain control of the situation and soon returned to his position. For these horses, dealing with the constant comings and goings of often clueless strangers is no easy task and tends to cause a lot of stress.
You just tell them stop screaming.
After observing a tourist displaying rude behavior, a mounted officer approached and began reprimanding him. The visitor, trying to avoid the conversation, attempted to walk away, but the officer, without hesitation, grabbed his backpack, making it clear the situation wasn't over yet. She continued lecturing the rude man, only allowing him to leave after the lesson on respect had been thoroughly delivered. A group of students was visiting Buckingham Palace when they started laughing and joking about the royal guards. However, a police officer quickly approached and scolded the young people, explaining that the soldiers were fulfilling their duty and that if they continued the jokes, they would be removed from the site. And here she is again. If you've watched other videos about the royal guards, you've surely seen this woman's face, as she always seems to be looking for trouble. This time, as usual, she irritated the guards by persistently touching the horse and the reins, laughing non-stop, and even encouraging other tourists to do the same.
Completely bananas.
Faced with her lack of respect, a police officer called her aside for a serious conversation. But as we already know, this type of approach rarely resolves the issue. It's truly surprising that she hasn't been arrested yet. This tourist was visibly embarrassed after being scolded by the royal guard for touching the horse's reins. This woman didn't appreciate being advised by another tourist not to touch the reins and left rather irritated. It seems the royal guard's horses aren't having much patience, not even with children. During her visit to the palace, a woman took a rather unusual action. she threw her gloves in front of the guard. This gesture, in many cultures, is interpreted as a form of challenge or even a provocation for a confrontation. By throwing the glove, she clearly demonstrated disrespect. However, before the situation escalated, a police officer approached and politely reprimanded her, explaining that the guard was simply doing his duty, serving the country. The officer then picked up the glove and returned it to the woman. After receiving the glove back, she, accompanied by a rabbi, walked away from the area. The problem with some tourists is that, besides being inappropriate, they like to insist on their mistakes. This video perfectly illustrates why the royal guards often can't be too lenient. While heading to his post, a soldier had to walk exactly through the spot where a tourist was standing. For those who don't know, the guards are not allowed to deviate from their path. However, the tourist, in a provocative tone, refused to step aside. Despite the situation, the soldier managed to maneuver around the obstacle and reach his post. But situations like this clearly show why they sometimes need to resort to shouting. After all, there is always someone clueless ready to get in the way. It seems the horse didn't like the little girl's hat very much. If one clueless tourist is already a problem, imagine an entire family. In a recorded case, a royal guard had to shout at two boys who got too close. Shortly afterward, the police arrived, and the mother tried to justify their behavior. However, other videos revealed that the same family had already caused several inconvenient situations with the guards, clearly showing that no one in the group seemed to have much common sense. One thing that rarely works out well is the combination of teenagers and royal guards, as they often end up behaving irresponsibly. In this video, a group of young people began shouting profanity and making obscene gestures toward one of the guards. However, the situation took a different turn when the cameraman confronted them, firing back with insults. After being confronted, the teenagers eventually gave up on their provocations and left.
Disrespectful, fuck off. Go on, go, fuck off. Fucking little pricks. Yeah, fuck you and all.
A cameraman was filming at Buckingham Palace when he noticed unusual police activity. Curious, he approached and discovered that a group of tourists, who appeared to consist of rabbis, was disrespecting the royal guards. In response, the police intervened politely, asking the group to leave the area. There's a saying that goes, if parents don't teach, the world will. And this video is a clear example of that. A boy who was sightseeing began disrespecting and provoking a royal guard, who remained impassive in his posture. However, the persistent teasing ended up irritating a British woman who was present. Without hesitation, she scolded the boy, demanding that he stop such disrespectful behavior. With nothing to say in return, the boy ended his antics and merely offered an embarrassed smile. As you may have noticed in the previous video, something that rarely ends well and is not well received is staging protests in front of the royal guards. In addition to potentially generating controversies and conflicts with those nearby, this kind of behavior often causes stress to the horses accompanying the guards. In one recorded case, a woman held up a pro-Palestine sign in front of one of the royal guards, but before she could continue, a police officer quickly intervened. Politely, he explained that it wasn't the appropriate place for such a demonstration. Showing understanding, the woman accepted the argument and left, accompanied by a man who was also holding a Palestinian flag. Although everyone has the right to protest and express their opinion, it's essential to consider the environment and context in which we choose to do so. Here we have yet another example of a tourist being asked to leave by the police after disrespecting the royal guards. I can only imagine how exhausting it must be to deal with this kind of situation almost every day. A tourist, trying to be funny, started making jokes and lame remarks about a royal guard mounted on his horse. However, what seemed to be just an attempt at humor quickly became a tense situation when the visibly irritated cameraman decided to confront the tourist. The atmosphere heated up quickly, with the two exchanging words and engaging in a heated argument. Later, the tourist, determined to keep stirring up trouble, returned to the area with his phone in hand, attempting to create another episode of conflict while recording everything. But the cameraman, undeterred, confronted the young man again, reiterating his displeasure with the tourist's behavior.
Move back over there now. I said move away from me. Do not get in my space. Do not get in my space. I said move back now.
Don't touch me.
Yeah, I will touch you.
Okay, but
Yeah, don't touch me, I said. Go away from me. Yeah, let go of my arm now. Yeah, I will. He's just pushed me. He's making fun of the guards, and he's just kind of...
The situation escalated even further, with both exchanging verbal challenges, until finally, the police were called to resolve the standoff. Upon arrival, the officers intervened and ordered the young man to leave, putting an end to the chaos that had unfolded. Some tourists will do anything for a photo, even if it means disrespecting the guards and getting kicked out. Two young men, who were already causing trouble, were removed from the area by a police officer. Even during the intervention, the two still tried to snap one last photo, completely ignoring the instructions. It's astounding how this place attracts so many tourists without common sense. In addition to the frequent appearances of clueless tourists, the royal guards occasionally have to deal with people who are clearly out of their minds. This was the case with a man who decided to put on a show while passing through the area. First, he began petting the horse, then started making completely nonsensical movements, throwing his fingers into the air as if talking to someone who wasn't there, and even occasionally pretending to box an invisible opponent. Since he didn't pose a direct threat, both the guards and the police chose not to intervene and simply watched the bizarre scene, which surely left the tourists puzzled. Something many tourists take too long to learn is that you shouldn't touch the royal guards, not even for a brief moment. As a result, officers often have to push visitors away, not too harshly, in an attempt to make them realize their lack of respect. It's a recurring situation and, many times, necessary to ensure discipline and respect in the area. A royal guard was walking his usual route when he passed near a group of tourists who started making jokes and mocking him. A policewoman quickly appeared and scolded the group, explaining that the guards were soldiers fulfilling their role and that mocking them was inappropriate. Sometimes, these visitors really lack the slightest bit of empathy.
Oh, yeah. The thing is that funny today, we don't sample that here. Yeah, you should do it. They're working for, yeah, so please don't mimic them.
Thank you so much for watching the video until the end. If you enjoyed it, leave a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the upcoming content. See you next time.